other reveal of RFK that happened. So this was like a 1-2 punch that happened, unfortunately, that kind of hit us right in the gut, Jay. This hits us right in the gut. So at the same time, RFK Jr. is posting all this Zionist crap on his Health and Human Services handle. He's also telling us a revision of his opinions, and I guess he is a whole. We're calling this kind of a 180 or a flip flop, whatever you want to call it. It's a call to action for all of us. As a Secretary of Health and Human Services, I'm deeply concerned about the recent measles outbreak. This situation has escalated rapidly, with the Texas Department State Health Services reporting 146 confirmed cases since late January, primarily in the South Plains region. Tragically, this outbreak has claimed the life. Is that an F? Life? Oh, yeah, I thought it said life. Okay, life, singular, of a school-aged child, the first measles-related fatality in the U.S. in over a decade. The current Texas outbreak has predominantly affected children, with 116 of the 146 occurring in the 18 and younger. The report is that 79 of the cases involved individuals who have not received the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. I like it says and. See, so 79 did not get all three. Pointed note there. Okay. How many of them got them? Yeah.
The MMR is a combination vaccine, so it's all 3 in 1. So
all 3 in 1. Got it.
Yeah,
okay. MMR. Okay. Well, 62 have unknown, so we don't even know, but we have to assume the worst, of course. If you're a vaccine production company, you have to assume they didn't have it. That's got to be why. In response to this outbreak, he's directed the preparedness and response team to work closely with Texas health authorities to provide comprehensive support, assistance, laboratory, vaccines, blah, 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 medications, CDC in the continuous communication with them, and ensuring a coordinated, effective response to contain the outbreak. He spoke to the governor, the health officials, committing to provide them to any additional support they need to bring this outbreak to an end. And now we're going to get to the more hurtful part here. It says, as healthcare providers, community leaders, and policymakers, we've shared the responsibility to protect public health. Okay, how does that work, RFK? Well, this includes ensuring that accurate information about vaccine safety and efficiency is disseminated. Okay. What does that look like? Well, we're going to engage with communities, understand their concerns, provide competent education, make vaccines readily accessible to those who want them. Okay. Now I'm getting a little weird about this. Okay. Parents play a pivotal role. All parents should consult with healthcare providers. MMR vaccine. That's the 3 ones you mentioned. Okay. The decision to vaccinate is a personal one.
Which is good. He put that in there, which is good.
That's good. Vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. I've already seen people, Jay, I want your take on this, but I've already seen people still defending that Kennedy has not actually changed his tune. This is not a reversal. A lot of people gung-ho that are going down with the ship on this one, they're saying this is not a reversal at all. He's always had this stance. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Yeah. So first of all, I haven't seen him say anything about mRNA technology during the pandemic. I do know that he called out the COVID vaccine in particular, which is based on mRNA technology, but the way, a lot of people like Dr. Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough have actually spoken about the inherent dangers of mRNA technology, I've actually never heard him even address that. So,
now in the hearing, he said, I'm going to make sure that we stick to the CDC schedule, which includes mRNA COVID vaccines. So he's saying, I will stick to that schedule.
Okay. Well, if he said that, then that must include, like some form of mRNA technology, which is, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. But as far as him talking about the dangers of it, he hasn't done that. Now, what he has done is spoken and written extensively about the dangers of the MMR vaccine. And I'm reading his book right now. I should go grab it. I should have grabbed it, for the podcast, but it's called Vax-Unvax, right? And he has an entire chapter dedicated to the MMR vaccine and pointing out the differences in chronic disease and autism rates in children who get the MMR vaccine, early on versus those who get it later on and all that. And in that chapter, he didn't dive into, completely unvaccinated versus vaccinated people with the MMR. But in previous chapters, he spoke about people who were completely unvaccinated and those who stuck to the schedule. And he also showed a correlation between autism and chronic diseases. So, like, my biggest question, right, is when I read that article, the key lies in what he's omitting, because he himself has expressed a lot of questions about the safety of the vaccine schedule and the MMR vaccine in particular. And he himself has also questioned how dangerous the measles virus itself actually is. So I'm glad that you read the start of that article, because you know as well as I know, right, that most people who read articles are not reading the entire article all the way through. Most people see the headline. Maybe half the people will read the first paragraph or two, but very few people are going to read the article all the way through. Now, if you keep reading that article, what you're going to see is RFK go on to say that, vitamin A and vitamin D are both important factors in protecting people. He'll also go on to say that measles is not a relatively deadly disease, because, the overwhelming majority of cases, it's benign in people. But that isn't what he led with. Like what he led with in the article was, oh my God, there's a measles outbreak. Oh my God, somebody died. Oh my God, it's spreading fast. Oh my God, unvaccinated people are at risk. Oh my God, unvaccinated people are putting everyone else at risk. And then when you read later on into the article, then he gives you the overall context. But at no point in the article does he mention any of the risks that he has literally made a career like of like, informing people about. So it's like,
That's the giveaway right there,
yeah.
Jay.
And my question for him is, if you say that education and informed consent is important, right? At no point in this article do you tell people where they should go to get informed about potential consequences like of this MMR vaccine. What he tells people is you should go talk to your doctor and see what your doctor says. And we know what the doctors are going to say because they've only been told one side of the situation. And this is what his entire book is about. So I'm just left wondering, if you want to be even handed, at least you got to tell people about some of the potential dangers you've come across, or point them to someone, or a study, or, at least mention that there have been studies that show correlations between autism and chronic diseases that it ties into vaccination. Like, why are you not even bringing it up so people can ask the question? Like, all you do is you deliver the benefits and you don't acknowledge any of the risks that you have done a lot of digging into yourself. So that's why I was confused.
This is an excellent point you make, Jay. Excellent. This is so we're in a world now that you have the opportunity to speak. You speak. You have an opportunity to put out a tweet. You put out a tweet. You have an opportunity to do a Substack. You do a sub. There's so many ways to get information out to people. Gone are the days where you can make an excuse that a public health official or somebody in the limelight only has so much time. There's only you're on TV for that's it, and then you can make an excuse. Well, they only have so much time. They can only say so much. They have more to say. That's not their fault. No, you're deliberately leaving out information. You're doing. He's guilty of exactly the same thing that Fauci and Bill Gates were guilty of the entire way through COVID, where they deliberately left
I wouldn't take it that far. And the reason I wouldn't take it that far is because He does actually mention vitamin A and vitamin D, but you have to read
Okay,
a lot further into the
okay.
article before you get
I
there.
I'm using it as an analogy.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'm saying that it's the same technique. Now, you're right. Let me double down on what you're saying because it's important people know that he absolutely is talking about vitamin D and things that you can do to improve your personal health. Bill Gates and Fauci never did that ever. So I'm not saying that he's doing exactly that thing. He's using the technique where they did not talk about vitamin D. He's using that technique for vaccine safety protocol that you can do that he knows you can do because, like you said, it's in his book. But since he's been assigned HHS secretary, he's not using this platform to tell us these are the things you need to look at if you're going to make this decision. And asking your doctor is not even close to doing your due diligence to do that. That's not even close. And he
Yeah.
knows that. So
What
he didn't run out of time. He didn't get cut to a commercial. He's not telling us, and I think you nailed that part. Again, I'll give him credit for telling us about the vitamin D. He's not telling us how we can look into the safety measures and whether or not this is going to be good for your children at
Yeah.
all.
Like what I would have wanted to see from him was because if you're gonna, I feel like you want to start out with the big picture, right? And shouldn't the big picture of this conversation be measles is not necessarily a deadly disease for most people in well nourished populations? Shouldn't that be like the start of the conversation? Everybody, let's take a deep breath. Let's calm down for a second. Let's put things in perspective. People die from the flu every year. There are flu deaths every single year, but we don't have a big media storm and a media panic every time somebody dies of a flu death. So let's compare the numbers. What are the flu deaths compared to the measles deaths? And when you look at it, they literally have roughly the same like case fatality rate. It's about 0.1% in a well-nourished population of both the measles and the flu. So like it's not wise to start out by fear mongering and telling people, oh, like, I'm very concerned about what's going on. This is very dangerous. Like, yes, you want to make sure people are aware that there's a measles outbreak, but let's start out with a comparison. Well, first of all, give people the big picture and then point out that, hey, there is a vaccine for it. The vaccine does protect against transmission. There are reasons that we're now looking into at the NIH and the CDC. I'm sorry, we're now looking into potential consequences and potential long-term side effects of these things, which we may not fully understand. So, we're going to leave the decision up to you guys as parents to decide, is the risk worth the benefit? And we're going to prepare people like with their options. Like, and I heard him say in the article that he's going to give out vaccines in these affected communities. I didn't hear him say in the article that he's going to give out organic food with vitamin A and vitamin D in these communities to help people get protected. So, like, I am waiting for the real conversation to happen. And he did actually go on the news and say he's working with some doctors who are prescribing people who already have the disease, vitamin A and vitamin D supplements to, strengthen the immune system. But he's not talking about these things as a prophylactic. The only thing that he mentions that you can do as a prophylactic, aka to protect yourself before you get it, is to get the shot, which he built a career of informing people may have unintended consequences that we don't fully understand. So I want to see more of the big picture. I
Yeah.
want to see him give people a accurate understanding and of the risks associated with measles and the vaccine.
Well, I would love to know what he thinks of this tweet from Vigilant Fox. And we're going to look at this real quick and a video to back it up because we like to know more about measles. We'd like to know about the history of measles. And according to the vigilant Fox, did you know that the death rate for measles declined by 98% before the measles vaccine was introduced? That's interesting. Interesting. This is all on the CDC website. That decline had nothing to do with the vaccines. So if vaccines didn't do it, what caused that decline
Nutrition.
from 1900?
But you know what they focus on, Matt? What they focus on is the infection rate. Now, after the vaccine was introduced, the infection rate did drop dramatically. So it is good at protecting against infection. However, we have to look at the risk that people, have of dying from the measles and of severe complications, right? We have to look at that, and then we have to look at potential risks, of the vaccine. So, like, I was pretty disappointed in how the article, kind of went. The best thing I can say, for me to play devil's advocate, in on behalf of him, the only thing I can say is, okay, well, maybe he's waiting until he has more people appointed into these positions, and he has some of these studies up and rolling before he starts some of these conversations. But in my opinion, that's a bad idea, because, like, we're in the mix now. Like, the problem is happening now. And if you are the Secretary of Health and Human Services, then you have a duty to the people, to the American people, to be honest with people, to give people, like, the big picture that you yourself, are aware of. So I'm not saying you have to say vaccines are definitely dangerous, don't get the vaccine. I'm not saying he has to say that, but he should be informing people, hey, there are unintended consequences we're looking into. Let's put this in perspective of the death rate, and let's compare infection rates to death rates and see how it's changed over time. And let's study, the overall thing. So that's a great tweet by Vigilant Fox. Did that come? I'm guessing that came before Kennedy made his statements, right? Is that a new tweet or an old tweet?
I think it might be new.
It's a new tweet. Okay.
Don't quote me on. I don't have the date here. I just screen grabbed it. But I can tell you this. This attorney, Aaron Suri, went on Tucker to explain this 98% decline. So this isn't us saying it. This is an attorney saying it on Tucker. And if you guys didn't know this, now is the time to pay attention. Again, we're not saying this. Someone else is reporting on this. So check this out and see. Take what you might from it. Whatever. Take it for a grain of salt. But it's worth looking at. And I would love to hear what RFK Jr. thinks of this little clip from Tucker that a lot of people saw. So check this out.
Should take credit for the decline in measles deaths in America. They should. But they should take credit in the following way. Between the year 1900, this is all on the CDC website, what I'm about to tell you, and the year 1960, 61, 62, the years before the first measles vaccine in America, 1963, the mortality rate for measles declined by over 98%. Yes, by over 98%. That is, you can just go pull up the mortality data on the CDC website. This is uncontroversial. It's just data, what I just said. Some people get emotional about it, but it's just data, what I just said.
Why would they get emotional?
Well, for the reasons we just discussed. That decline had nothing to do with vaccines. You know how I know? There was no measles vaccine. That's how I know.
What caused that decline?
I think that in part it's the public health health authorities should take a lot of credit for that.
Nutrition,
better sanitation, clean water, getting sewage running out of the streets.
So yeah, the things he's mentioning, interesting. So why does this not matter in that report? Why does RFK Jr. not seem to care about the timeline? Because the timeline is important. We have to apply this to everything we look into, Jay. We know that we've learned this skill. We don't just look at the thing in the moment. We look at what led us to this thing. So what is going on there? Why is this not?
He does actually talk about some of that later on in the article, but that's an important part of the framing of this conversation that he left out at the beginning of the article. So on the one hand, you can say, well, people have to do their due diligence and read the article all the way through. But on the other hand, my counter to that is I want him to frame this situation fairly. Like, I want it to be framed in a fair way. I don't want it to be framed in favor of the vaccination companies. I don't want him to omit anything that's inconvenient to the vaccination companies. I don't want him to bury all the parts that run counter to the narrative that he is willing to include deep down at the end of the article. I want him to lead with the overall context that Aaron Siri just gave us, and then tell people at the end, but let's also not discount the fact that, you know, the infection rate of measles has dropped since the vaccine. So you as parents, you know, and you as individual liberty-loving Americans can make the decision: do I want to risk getting the disease, or do I want to risk the possible unintended consequences of this vaccine? And that is a decision that each person should make for themselves. That's how I want to see like that conversation to be framed. So, you know, maybe I'm a purist, you know, maybe I'm asking for too much, but I think, you know, given what we've just gone through over the past, you know, couple years in COVID, I don't think it's too much to ask for transparency when this is what RFK has built, you know, his entire political brand on. He said he wants to restore trust in government and restore the credibility of these agencies. That's how you do it, by framing the conversation honestly, not by playing ball with big pharma and trying not to hurt their feelings too much, in my opinion.
I think if people need to not get their hopes too up on this guy. I think it's, you know, if we can have a conversation we weren't allowed to have before, great. But are the policies going to change? Is everything going to change? I don't know, man. I don't know.
I want to remain hopeful. I want to remain hopeful, and I want to think that by applying pressure, we can get results. Because, like, if we truly believe in the mantra, you know, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. RFK has seen all this shit, man. So, so it's like, if there's enough pressure from the people and from the base to do the right thing, then I think we have a far better chance of actually getting progress under RFK and Trump, you know, on this specific issue, like improving health and, you know, medical freedom, than we would have had under a Democrat administration. And and I'm not, this is not an endorsement again of the Republicans, because I agree more with the left on some issues and more on the right on other issues. But in this current administration, we have a much better chance of actually seeing progress, like in at least on medical freedom. So I don't want to say he's exactly the same as Fauci, and I don't want to say there's no hope, but I don't think we're going to get that much progress unless we apply all the pressure. Because while RFK is there, Larry Ellison has a lot more money than RFK, and he's also there. And if you look at Trump's history and what he's done his whole life, Trump seems to be a money guy. So, you know, and now RFK is more popular than Trump. He still is like, you know, when you were showing those approval ratings, if you pull up RFK's rating,
he's going to be
like
even higher
+9.
than that.
Yeah, he's +9. People like him more than they like Trump. So, you know, Trump wants to keep him close because RFK is popular. But I think the point is to keep him neutered. Like, while you have him there, don't let him do too much. But that's why this show is important, Matt. That's why we got to educate people and speak to some people on the left end. Before I go, I just want to, you know, leave the viewers with one thing. I saw a video yesterday, and it was like, what happened to these liberals? And, you know, it was like a screenshot, not a screenshot, but like a little cut of a liberal calling for more organic produce and less vaccines and less GMOs. And it's the same liberal with the crazy colored hair, you know, and the piercings everywhere and the tattoos that, you know, make up the stereotypical liberal image today, but they're saying the right things. And this is from like 20 years ago. But now the liberal today is like, no. If you disagree with vaccines at Big Pharma, then you're a Trump supporter. Why can't we get back to the old school liberals who wanted less big pharma, less big companies, and more small farmers, more organic produce? Whatever happened to those liberals? Can we find some of those, Matt? There has to be some of them left in California.
No, they're gone. And if
there must be some of them. None of them.
If they're still calling themselves liberals, Jay, then they're gone. They can still call themselves lefties like us. I mean, we're homeless lefties, but don't forget the other thing that they used to be about, and that's anti-war. And I had to bring this one up because this one, Garland Nixon shared this one, and I just thought it was very important. This is the difference of the left. We talk about the left, liberals, and the right funding war in Ukraine. The left, that's us homeless left. We're against funding genocide in Gaza. Again, it's pretty easy. That's what used to be the left. Liberals are in favor of war in Ukraine. They're also in favor under Biden for the genocide in Gaza. Now they're starting, now it's Trump. They're not. And the right, I mean, they're a little mixed up too, but at least they have one green mark next to, one red mark next to the against the funding war in Ukraine. So everyone's all mixed up. I think that's the point today. Nobody knows what to call themselves. We call ourselves the homeless left, and we're just have to figure out how we maneuver within this new time. But historical context is important, so I'm glad you brought up that person that no longer seems to exist.
Yeah, and really quick, I think part of the reason why the right is coming to the correct side a lot quicker than the left on the war in Ukraine is because Russia is a Christian country that has a little bit of a conservative reputation, at least now. And I think because religion is so tied into this situation, and Judaism and Christianity have been tied at the hip, in Palestine, it's more Muslims, and there are Christians there, and they get left out the conversation. There's actually, I want to say 10% of the population who are Christians, in Palestine too. But we have to realize that, hey guys, freedom of religion should be part of our principles. It's not just like your own personal freedom of religion. We should want other people who have other religions to have the same rights and to be treated fairly too. So I'll leave it at that.